What's the weirdest thing you've seen littered or dumped in Philadelphia?
I saw a whole bag of Totino's pizza rolls on the ground once.
A pink leather couch.
The pizza blanket.
Pizza blanket?
Yeah, it's like a pizza print blanket. It's just like one giant pizza slice.
I think for me it was a sticky boob. A sticky boob.
Someone dumped mattresses in an area that was all public.
Piece of a carousel, like a little horse with a stick through it, dumped on my block when I lived in Northern Liberties for a little bit. There's a homeless guy in the neighborhood that just kind of takes all that stuff and kind of makes it into sculptures and places them around. So I saw that for quite a few days.
That's pretty cool.
I was very intrigued where that came from.
Yeah, totally. Wow, that's awesome. I've never heard anything like that of being.
Someone was just keeping that in their living room somewhere for however long.
Heck yeah, totally.
I don't know, probably a full dining room set. Just in the middle of a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Maybe an art installation. Yeah, I mean a lot of trash itself isn't weird as much as it is oh, don't eat that.
It's the Salvage episode where the circular economy gets weird. Welcome to the Circle Up podcast, where we tell the stories of the circular economy in Philadelphia.
Well, so let's circle up. I'm Candace Lawton, the Executive Director of Circular Philadelphia.
And I'm Sam Witchin, one of the co-founders of Circular Philadelphia.
In episode 5, we talked about resale and its importance to the circular economy. But everything that's resold originally comes from somewhere, and someone has to get the stuff from the place it's not being used to the place where it can be resold.
Enter Salvage.
That's right. People don't always think about the logistics behind keeping materials in circulation, but it's such an essential part of the system. Someone has to be willing to roll up their sleeves, do the cleanouts, sort through the mess, and physically move materials from point A to point B so they don't end up in the landfill. And that willingness matters. Salvage only works because there are individuals and businesses that see value where others see inconvenience.
It's true. Over the years, I've helped family and friends identify places to take things when loved ones have passed away so that they don't end up in a landfill. And it can feel so overwhelming to have all this stuff to get rid of. And sometimes you have to get rid of it in a short time frame. People want to do the right thing, but it can be really time consuming to do something other than just throw the stuff out.
The first person we're going to hear from in this episode is George Mathis, the owner of Thunderbird Salvage in the Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia. They're a business that does those cleanouts we're talking about, and George is going to tell us all about the weird and wonderful world of salvage.
Hey, my name is George Mathis, and we are at Thunderbird Salvage main headquarters in a historic church in Kensington. Thunderbird Salvage is a secondhand store, and we have started the business based off of the fact that we do cleanouts, and we do full estate cleanouts and get everything out of a property, and then we have to process it all and decide what is good, what is trash. My passion is archaeology, so I always wanted to be an archaeologist. When I was about 8 years old, I found an ancient arrowhead on a riverbank in southern Delaware. I just put my hand in the sand and I pulled it up, and there was a little spear point about that big, made of red jasper. And from that moment on, I was fascinated by what was in the ground. And I went out to look for more over the years, and I found more, and then I started finding other things. So not just arrowheads, but historical artifacts. And then when I was digging up bottles, I decided I can't keep all these bottles, so I did a flea market, and I made some good money on some of the bottles. And then I found out from other vendors that they went to auction houses and did cleanouts, and they were able to make money with other things. So I decided, all right, I'm gonna go to auctions, and I'm gonna find ways to source secondhand stuff and resell. And I did that, and then that's it. I was hooked. Finding things, reselling things, bringing things out to the world that we're not doing. So, here we are with a Thunderbird Salvage business based off of finding one arrowhead when I was a little kid. And that's why I'm into the Native American symbolism and history, philosophies. I could say that the Thunderbird is very important because it correlates with the phoenix, which is from ancient Egypt, and it means 3 specific things: creation, rebirth, and transformation. So the Thunderbird is the Native American version of the phoenix, and those 3 things are what we do here: creation, rebirth, and transformation of everything that we get. The challenges of doing this salvage work in the city is that there's so much stuff that I'm overwhelmed, getting so many calls. And then like a lot of people are like, hey, how come you're not answering your phone? I have this job for you. I'm getting like 10 calls a day sometimes to pick up stuff. And now people just want to give it to me. And I'm trying to keep up with it all. So that's a challenge because there's more stuff than not. And I encourage more people to do this. Start a small business and stores. I'm passing on stuff to other people now that can resell. I'm like, please just save this thing. I don't even want to cut. I'm overwhelmed with what I'm doing. I've networked with lots of realtors and insurance brokers and property dealers. And when they get a property that's loaded with items, a lot of people know that there's value in that. So it goes to the person who's dealing with those estate items to say, okay, what is of value here and can I sell this stuff? They ask that question themselves. A lot of times I've recently been doing buyouts because today people know how to sell stuff. It's easy, Facebook Marketplace and Instagram and Craigslist. So people can make money, anybody can make money, but they realize that there's so much stuff that they can't get rid of it all. So I'll do a buyout of an estate for like $2,000 when one item might be worth that because I'm getting some good mid-century furniture, but they're happy that they're getting something for it because they know it's worth money, but they're also happy that they're passing everything on. I'll get paid for jobs and I'll have to buy estates. And it depends on what stuff there is. We take everything to a warehouse, we stage it all in big piles. Basically, every estate gets its own area and we'll pile up boxes and then process those boxes. And if it's furniture, we'll pile up the furniture and then we'll come back to it, assess it. We have a sorting station where stuff goes to auction houses or we donate stuff or it comes here because we cannot bring it all here. There's too much stuff. And then we have our scrap inventory and our scrap metal, we separate it down to its fullest potential: copper, brass, aluminum. So everything gets processed to its fullest potential that we can do to keep it out of a landfill. And I've developed these ideas over the years through learning about what each piece has the potential to go to. When I get big architectural salvage, I don't have the ability to fit it into my storefront here, but I will sell it. And there's places in the area that I've either traded or sold big bulk items to. There's a place in southern Delaware. I'll take a big truckload down to a place called Jane's Reliable, and that's in Dagsboro, Delaware. And they have a beautiful architectural salvage store down there, and it's a big hit down there. So as long as I'm getting it out to be saved and reused, I feel good about it, but I can't display all this stuff. Circle Thrift actually we were working together for years where they would get so many electronics that they would give it to me because I was scrapping them. I was separating out the gold and silver out of like phones and laptops and things. And they would rather have that than not. And then, they get stuff, they'll get stuff and give it to me because if they have it for too long, they want to have a good home. And then sometimes if there's so much trash that they get, I'll pick up their trash and I'll get rid of it because, we're working together here. More gets saved than not. In my estimate now, because actually I've been taking on better jobs, I don't need to take on jobs full of cockroaches and bed bugs, which I've done in the past, which everything had to be thrown away. But now 80% gets saved. And what doesn't get saved is some particle board furniture that nobody would buy anyway. And it's funny because all this particle board furniture is modern furniture, which is what is only available mostly at these stores now. So, you know, but we're doing a good thing, I believe. Yeah, furniture unfortunately is big and bulky and people are losing the space to be able to keep it. And storage costs money. In some cases, storing an item costs more than it's worth. So what's sad is that I go to the dumps in Philadelphia like on a regular basis, like every few days, with a dump truck load of stuff that nobody will buy because trash is trash. And I see people dumping truckloads of good merchandise, unfortunately, and it's continuing every day. So I'm talking to these landfill companies and they can't keep up with the amount of stuff being dumped. So unfortunately, there's not enough small businesses that are taking this on. And while a lot of stuff does get saved, most of it doesn't. So we're losing this stuff every day, which means we need more small businesses to come up and save this stuff and make secondhand stores. But that requires work. So we need people to want to work and believe in it, because once you get into it, any secondhand business will be successful if you put the time into it. It's out there, it's everywhere. People now give me stuff for free. Over the past couple of years, I haven't even had to buy much because people just keep giving me stuff. Or I basically get into an estate and they're like, just take everything. We'd like to see it go to a good home rather than the dump. And I'm like, let's do it. There was a house that I did, and there must have been thousands of pounds of vintage clothes in there because he hoarded clothes. And out of that house, we were able to profit on that. There's thousands of dollars being made, and we're wholesaling the stuff. I didn't want to sell clothes. I can't stand the clothes. It was always so much. There was so much, and there was so much time to do processing of the clothes. I would just donate the clothes. But over the years, I realized that the vintage clothing business is a big business. So I started saving them all and then processing them, going through them, cleaning them. Now we have a big vintage clothing area in the store, and it's our biggest seller. And I never ever would have expected clothes to be our biggest seller from what we have been sourcing. But textiles right now are not being produced very well, and textiles of the past produce way better, nicer stuff. So that's why it's a big business. And that's part of sustaining all these old textiles is important. So I get it. I have mountains of clothes right now to go through. Mountains. So yeah, and then what clothes we can't use, I made a relationship with someone who sources them all from this whole entire country and makes giant bales and then distributes them across the world. And then these places that they go to, they'll either scrap what's in it or reuse it to low-income people. And so every piece of clothing that I get gets reused, which is awesome. Most of the time, I believe that people don't want to keep producing trash, as in, our economy keeps producing these things that we'll go and buy, and then we use them for a short period of time and then throw them away. When we're sourcing all these old things, we are saving them to be reused, and a lot of times they're built better and can last longer, and that's what people want. So the people are tuning into that fact, that these items that we save can be continued to be used for so much longer than today's items being produced. Because nature is not giving us continued materials to keep making these things in the way we do, so why not go in the past and keep sourcing and sustaining these items for our future? Basically, none of this stuff is being made anymore that we have sourced. And to go into a Walmart or Bed Bath & Beyond, you're not going to see this stuff. And that's what people want to see, stuff that was produced many years ago and available now still. That is a challenge. The city streets, working in the city streets and the sidewalks and doors and up and down steps. The labor is so intense. If we're up in a big apartment building, we got to go down a hallway, down elevators, down to the street. It's a very hard thing to do. I have a fleet of trucks. I have 4 box trucks, 3 dump trucks, a cargo van, and they'll go out on jobs every day. And you know, I can't get permits every day to do these. Sometimes I get a call, just get this stuff out of the house. So I have to block the street. And sometimes I have to block the street, and so we get like 20 minutes. I don't have to drive around the block every 20 minutes to let cars through, because that's the illegal time sometimes, is block a small street. And you know, sometimes when people find out that I'm Thunderbird Salvage and I'm saving stuff, they stop arguing and they're like, okay, you're doing a good thing. But they don't know what I'm doing at first. Sometimes they don't care, but I think that it'd be nice if there was a city number to call that had a place where basically like a fleet and a standby group of people that can come out and pick this stuff up and take it to a sourced warehouse, where then maybe stuff's available for sale, but also small businesses have access to it, could buy and resell the stuff. And you know, let's say Philadelphia Furniture Bank would be a place that could start setting that up. While they sourced all this furniture for people that are low income and can't have access to this stuff, there is so much stuff there right now that I think there's an opportunity for other small businesses to come in and make sure that, and save this stuff and redistribute it. You know, it's possible. You can hear how many times my phone's ringing right now?
There's all calls for
stuff, yeah. So I work with a community, with small businesses, and that's part of being a circular economy. That's what they talk about doing. And in order to be productive and useful and successful, everybody needs to work together. I've worked with Riverwards. I helped Vince start his storefront by getting items that he couldn't move, and I moved them in there because I have a big moving trucks like that. That's a big truck. And then so, you know, he because I know him, we know, you know, that's part of being in the community, like networking. He said, hey, can you help me move some of these big refrigerators? And then he gave me stuff, like we bartered. He gave me some things to eat for me moving stuff, which is like awesome. And I'm happy to do that. Events are very important. We have a big vendor following. So events are basically a way that we can market our business and then help other small businesses with marketing their business. A lot of the vendors are small business vendors. So we bring them here, and then everybody's getting good marketing out of it and making some income. Fill a Flea is it's another business separate from ours. And Now and Then Marketplace, I work with Steph Irwin, who helped me start my business and market it all these years. She has her own business and sources all these awesome vendors and brings them all together. So there's 2 businesses. One's at Hackett School, which is right behind us, and one's around our block of our store. And we're the center point, Thunderbird Salvage. And then the past couple of years, I've been having a Christmas pop-up sale at our other location, which is a mile north from our main store here. And it's been pretty successful. All the Christmas stuff I get in that form, I can save it and redistribute it. But nobody takes Christmas stuff. They don't want it. So I'm like, all right, I gotta deal with this stuff somehow. 95% of the Christmas stuff gets taken, and then 5% that doesn't, we just box it up and reuse it the next year. Or I'll give it away. I'll put it out for free, which people love free bins. But hey, people care about Christmas. That's why we can sell it. Actually, what was it, yesterday? Somebody was like, hey, are you gonna do a Christmas pop-up again? I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, I'll volunteer to help. I wanna do that. I'll even set up your whole store if you want me to. I'm like, okay, you can volunteer. Yeah, there was so much stuff produced in the past that it's still out there. Think about every house and estate, whatever you want to say, still has all this stuff inside, and it's just being stored. And I think a lot of humans are hoarders, So they hoard this stuff because they think it's going to be valuable. And guess what? It is. So they've hoarded it for a good reason, because it can be reused. Not just for them, but for everybody. So I always say thank you to the hoarders in the world that have saved all this good stuff that we can reuse. I mean, obviously it gets a little out of hand, but if it wasn't for hoarders saving all this stuff, we wouldn't have as much. If we stopped producing stuff currently, my business would still last hundreds of years. Hundreds. I'm not gonna say thousands. I'm not sure. There's stuff though out there in the world, it's constant, yeah. Sometimes it's easier to just go to a store like IKEA and get something and bring it in your house and not search it out. To search it out takes time, energy, but if you want to have fun with it, and we need to have more fun, that's what it's about, then go out and look for this stuff. You know, it's about energy, enthusiasm. You have to like it, you have to want it, and that's the key. If you can be a sustainable minimalist, that's a great idea, because obviously we don't need to keep all this stuff around us. We just really need what we can use. But if you appreciate historical artifacts and you collect stuff like me, that's another world. That's appreciating the past and collecting items and displaying them, and I encourage that, because unfortunately that stuff's getting thrown away too. So I went out on a construction site one night. I had permission to go on there to dig up antique bottles, and I'm at one part of the site and I started noticing bones everywhere. And then I realized they dug into a graveyard. So I'm looking around and you know, I pull up some dirt, and then all of a sudden this skull rolls out. And this is like 15 feet down, and then I realized, wait a second, this is a historical graveyard. And then I went back the next night and they filled it all in. So they were like scared that they didn't want nobody to see it. And so I got this skull that just rolled out of this, and I'm like, I'm not gonna bury it back. I decided I need to save it because it was so perfectly intact. And I took it to the Modern Museum, and they're like, this is one of the greatest specimens we've ever have seen, because it's so well preserved. So, you know, save what you need, and also save things that are of interest of our past that could be appreciated. Art, like art. We just saved all this art from the University of the Arts that the people who bought the building were not going to really care for. Why do they want to deal with it? They just need to finish their job. But I came in and I decided I need to save that art. And people care about that art. While you can't be using it to survive, you can appreciate it and hang it up and you know, get inspired from it. This store came about because we had so much good stuff that we wanted to pass on. Before this, I was doing flea markets, going out to flea markets and reselling, and it's too much work. So I decided to ground my business to one location, and this is what came out. This church was actually abandoned at the time, and I was working for a company called Metropolitan Property Management doing demolition and trash pickups. At the time, he hired me to gut it out because he was going to put apartments in it, and that was in 2017. And then I asked the owner of this building, I said, do you have any storefronts? Because I already have inventory. He's like, take the church. And I'm like, why am I taking the church? We're going to gut it out. He's like, I'm holding off on that project. So you can lease that, we'll take it year to year. And again, this was 2017, and now it's 2025. So we've been working it out so that he hasn't gutted out and put apartments in here. When we do an estate clean out or a big commercial property, a lot of things are organized in those properties where there's a theme in the rooms, like, you know, there's a living room, a dining room, kitchen, basement full of tools, you know, and then this is almost transferred as an estate where you can go in and there's areas where things are themed and you can find those things. So it's not just absolute chaos. So people like come in and say, wow, this is like a museum, or this looks like my grandmother's house, which everything was cool in my grandmother's house, but I don't see that anymore. So they like that nostalgic factor. So you can find everything from a full estate in there, and other weird things like oddities and artifacts that are unusual. So that's what my favorite thing is, strange and unusual artifacts. So they get sprinkled in with everything else. I found a lot of strange things over the years. One of my hobbies is I excavate privy pits, and that's just because my passion is archaeology. So I always wanted to be an archaeologist, and this is what came of that. Every yard before plumbing existed had an outhouse, and these outhouses underneath them had a pit dug deep in the ground, like a well, where they would poop in and then throw all their trash. And all the trash that they throw in from the past, that era, is handmade. So it's handmade glass, pottery, other historical artifacts that are interesting. And when we find that stuff, it's very hard to find them in the real world anymore. So in these privy pits is where it's a time capsule full of these awesome artifacts. And I always get permission when I excavate them on private land. Unless there's a construction site where they're tearing into them and they destroy them. So then I'm like, hey guys, we need to salvage these artifacts before you guys build on them. So I've done that over the years. So I have a big collection of antique bottles and historical privy artifacts, which I'd like to open up a museum to display. Saving these artifacts from the past shows who we were in the past, what we were capable of, and how time gets so altered. Like, our artifacts today are not very worthy of saving, in my opinion, but back then they were so beautiful. Even like things that were trash then were just made so well and with high beauty that, they're just displayable and they're fascinating. So today, there's some cool stuff, but not as much. I currently don't own this historic church. I rent it, and it's a beautiful historic church. This is exactly what we need in this area to survive. A lot of the churches, they're not getting attention, and they're losing their structures, and basically they're just falling apart and they're getting knocked down. And we're not gonna let that happen. So I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna fix it, but I need to have a fundraiser to do that. So I'm gonna set up a fundraiser within the next few months, and I'll make it known, and it's just to help us buy this place and keep it here for the long run. And then I purchased a property a mile north, and I call it Thunderbird Hall, which was an old secret society meeting hall. And I want to use that to help with the fundraisers, but that's also going to be a second storefront and used for venues like music. And so stay tuned, for Thunderbird Hall. It's all one business, but it's two separate locations, and a lot of cool things are happening with them.
That was George Mathis from Thunderbird Salvage.
Just thinking about all those cleanouts, especially the UArts building, makes me exhausted.
Same. Although I was the beneficiary of Thunderbird doing that UArts cleanout. I got a new to me drafting table chair in great condition.
Thunderbird salvages and sells just about anything, but some places are more specific and just salvage textiles, furniture, or architectural materials. What else am I missing?
Well, in episode 5, we heard from Karen Jarrett at the Resource Exchange about how wasteful the film and theater industries are. She saves some things from sets, but another group is focused on helping theatrical productions reduce their waste too.
That's right. Philadelphia Scenic Works supports performing arts organizations and individual artists by taking back sets from productions and creating new sets or making those materials available to other organizations. Executive Director Nathan Renner Johnson tells us all about it.
My name is Nathan Renner Johnson, and I'm the Executive Director of Philadelphia Scenic Works. We are a nonprofit scene shop. We're the first nonprofit and scene shop in the country. And what we do is we build projects, custom projects for arts organizations in the greater Philadelphia area that help to advance their missions for different arts organizations. So that's theaters, high schools. We do some stuff for the flower show every year, and we have a wood shop and metal shop, paint shop in West Philadelphia where we build all these projects. And at the same time, we are invested in our workforce and the artists who make this work and kind of creating a home for them. A lot of the arts organizations that we work with don't have the capacity or need for full-time skills or people, but they need those skills when they need them. And so by having a home and combining the work of many different organizations, we can put that all under one roof. And then I think most applicable to this conversation, we are working on innovative ways to have resource sharing and to reduce financial and material waste in the industry. The impetus for Philadelphia Scenic Works, which actually predates me being the executive director here, was that the person who was building scenery for a bunch of small companies, his wife got pregnant and he decided that he didn't really want to do a job that forced him to work 60 hours a week and had a whole bunch of stress. And so he decided that he'd much rather be a stay-at-home dad. And so he was like, I can't do this for you guys anymore. And so those theater companies came together, they fundraised a bunch of money and created this community shop. And this idea was always like, let's have a shop that's got a mission to work for all of us. It's a joint effort. And it's not just relying on a commercial operation, but something that's really invested in the mission of Philadelphia. And as that idea started to develop and grow, there became all of these pieces of it that were sort of revealed or that were part of the dream of like, oh, well, we can have an education program in a way that an individual company can't have an education program. And we can share resources amongst these companies in a way that, when a company only does 3 shows a year, we don't have the opportunity to, use various materials. But when we've got, PSW doing 50 shows a year, there's a lot more sharing and opportunities to be able to navigate amongst different companies. And so at the time that this started happening, I was a production manager working for a company that really only did 1 show a year. And so I really saw the need for a shop that we could turn to as we needed them and didn't need to employ someone full time, because every year we were looking for a new group of set builders and technicians. And by having a consistent resource to rely on, we could really see the benefit of that. And so that's how I got involved and sort of grown my role throughout the last couple of years in that way. We've got about a dozen companies that we build for multiple times a year, sort of in a regular way. In our 8-year history, we've worked with over 100 companies and done over 200 projects. So a lot of those 200 projects are the same companies, and then there's a lot of one-off things for different folks here and there too. And we like to sort of talk about everything that you see on stage is part of the set, the world that things are living in. And there's a different department called props, and we kind of divide props and set into 2 different categories. If you're renting a house or you're buying a house, everything you get with that house is the set, and everything that you bring in, the furniture, the curtains, the decor, that's all props. And so that's sort of how we divide it out. So we're building a lot of walls, a lot of platforms, flooring, things like that, doors, windows, structures. And so it's all big things that are really hard to kind of do on a small scale in your basement or in your garage. They really need a big warehouse and a big space and tools. So that's a lot of what we're doing, and that extends into curtains and like big scenic curtains, draperies and things like that, tracking and wheels and casters and all sorts of the things that make things move around on stage. That all comes under our purview as well. There are big commercial shops, and there's some really fantastic shops around the greater Philadelphia area that are servicing Broadway tours and Broadway itself and cruise ships and things like that. Those tend to be really expensive, and they're not focused on the same folks that we're focused on in terms of the smaller. I've had shops tell me like, I'm not going to look at a show if it's less than $35,000. Like I won't even think about it. And it's like that's our, that's people that we serve is the smaller guys and folks like that. And then there is there's a commercial shop that's a little bit more of our scale that popped up actually about the same time that we did because the need was so great. And we've both been operating simultaneously just because there's so many organizations who need this kind of work. The other thing that companies do is either hire someone in-house or kind of adjust the scope of what they're doing on the stage so that they can do it entirely in-house or do it with a reduced capacity, right? So they might not be able to do beautifully painted backdrops like we can, and so they'll change the designs or not focus on designs that need beautifully painted backdrops, or they might not be able to build a full house inside, so maybe they'll do one that's more representational with some furniture and a couple of doors, something like that. And you know, a lot of them were doing this before we existed too, and some of them still do it now, which is that you hire someone who's freelancing. The challenge with that is that a freelancer, you know, might be there 1 year, and then the next time you do a show, they've moved on to another job, or they're not available, or you might not have enough freelancers in the market. One of the sort of core pillars of our mission is about investing in our workforce, and I think this goes a lot back to the freelance labor. And without us here, we have companies who are looking for someone to fabricate their sets, but we also have artists who are looking to do this work and are really interested in supporting this work that's happening in small companies. And there's sort of a mismatch of timing and skills and support that happens without us here, where, like I said, there's these really busy times and these really shallow times. And we're kind of able to make a consistency and a regularity for a lot of these artists where we can be their home. And by working with our partners to work out in advance, we can make sure that we're building the things in those dip points, and then ready to go in the sort of the busy points with all of the sets in the background. And so it's about consistent work, it's about livable work, it's about having a home that's got the artistic resources that we need, which is the right tools, the right safety gear. And then it's also about investing in the pipeline and developing folks skills who are interested in this work. So our longest educational initiative is a workshop series, a free workshop series where we do one-day workshops that are skills-based, and those can be anything from a specific paint technique to how to build a flat for theater, to we've done one in financial literacy, and we did one with a Narcan training. And so it's really a broad, expansive thing, and the whole point of these workshops is that they're free, and they're supposed to be designed to learn a specific skill. So we've had people who are just breaking into the industry who come to these workshops, and we've had people who are much more seasoned but don't know how to do the skill that we're teaching, and so they can come, and it's a little bit of professional development, which is so hard for freelancers to get. We also do a lot of partnering with organizations that have internship and apprenticeship programs. We run an after-school tech theater club for high schoolers. It's free. Finally, we have our own in-house apprenticeship program to really help someone go from kind of entry-level to really hireable, because I think one of the other things that we see in this world of small companies and high schools is that there isn't a lot of opportunity to bring entry-level people in. And so folks who are interested in getting into this work don't have a paid opportunity to kind of grow into someone that can be hireable. When you're a small company and you need a set builder, you need them to, you're probably only gonna hire one person if you're not hiring us, and maybe two, and you don't have the ability to hire someone who doesn't have skills yet, right? Like your budget is just so limited, you've gotta get the person who's already got all the expertise. But so where do those people who have minimal skills or not enough skills yet, where do they learn to get the bigger skills? There aren't as many opportunities for that. And so we're really trying to create a place for that and to build people up to that level. So all of our partners sort of pay for the cost of their projects, and then they contribute to overhead expenses like our rent and our insurance, and then we also get donations to cover rent and insurance, and then our education initiatives are almost completely grant funded. What's really interesting is the seasonality of the theater world in the city, and especially with high schools in that mix. You know, summers tend to be a pretty low time, and then starting September, October, we get a huge spike, and then again in January, right after the holidays, everyone comes back, wants their set sometime in January. So we have, 10 load-ins in the first 6 weeks of the new year, which is a crazy amount for us. There's a couple different ways it can work. We like to say that we are a full service firm, but we will meet our partners where they are in terms of what they need. So the full process looks like a design is created based on the script in the show and the space and the artistic vision of that show. We then take that design and we cost it out and create a bid or a quote for how much it's going to cost. Then there's usually a process of value engineering it to get it into the budget that the partner has. And then once it's green lit, we start to do all of our pre-production, which includes ordering materials. We do build drawings for everything. We basically create our IKEA instructions for how everything needs to be built for our carpenters to take. Then it goes into build, then it finally gets painted or whatever treatments are. Then it goes to the load-in process where we bring it to the theater and the show runs for however long it runs, and then we come and take it away. Different organizations need different pieces of that. So for example, a lot of our professional theater partners hire an outside designer, a third-party designer, who can really be more embedded into the process and spend more time creating a very specific vision for that production. And oftentimes that's a show that isn't done frequently and that there isn't sort of a vernacular for. And it just allows there to be more artistic care put into that product. But for our high schools, we've actually done a lot of Mamma Mias. We now know what the Mamma Mia set wants to be, and so it's all about kind of figuring out what the best version is for that high school. So we can put together a proposal for them and we'll do the design work. Similarly, there are a lot of union houses where the labor in the venue is part of IATSE Local 8, and we can't do the load in there, so we'll just drop the set off and then they'll do the load in themselves. So we'll kind of meet wherever our partners, wherever they are, giving them whatever. Part of the puzzle that we need to fill, we'll fill it for them. But we are trying in relation to this work to not have to build as many custom things every single time as we can, because the problem in this industry specifically is that we do these shows, it's a full stage, it's a full world that we're creating, and then at the end of it, after a 3-week run, most of that ends up in the dumpster going away because they're not going to do that show again. There's no need to for 10 years or ever. Even two companies who are doing the same show. For example, our high schools, we often see trends in the shows that they're doing. They have vastly different spaces, and so what works for one high school feels itty-bitty on another high school stage, or one high school has a much bigger cast than others, so it needs more room. And so we really have to adapt and adjust those to each individual production. And when we get into our professional partners, they're often doing shows that no one's ever heard of before, or shows that are not done often, and so there's a really specific setting or a really different setting. And so, for example, for Interact Theater Company, we just built them a forest on stage and a cabin in the woods. And that was, the trees had to go exactly to the ceiling, but no taller than the ceiling, and so it's all very custom specific things. And so a lot of what happens is that, we get this raw material, it's built, it's thrown away in the trash. And so what we try to do in all phases of the process is figure out how can we make the most of this out of stock and existing things that we already have. So we try to stock very specific sizes. So even if you need a wall that's 9 feet tall, we might start with our stock 8-foot tall walls and then add a little piece of 1 foot on top to get to the height. So then the amount that we're making new and having to throw away is much, much less, and we can keep reusing the things that we already have. Our biggest limitations are money, which then impacts time, because we are all professional folks, and so all of our people get paid. So anything that takes more time takes more money, and it's a limiting factor. And so I say that because there's a community theater out here. I live out in Delaware County. There's a community theater that I'm a huge fan of called the Players Club of Swarthmore, and they have almost no scenic budget at all. All of their labor is volunteers, people who are working on the shows. But they are experts at reuse and recycling because they don't have money to buy a bunch of whole new materials, but they have really, 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 really free or cheap labor. And so they're constantly able to make things completely different by paint and treatment and taking things apart to their composite parts. For us in sort of this professional space, we try to make these sort of reusable modular items that we can modify over and over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, a lot of the modifying an old item, the time that it takes to do that is more expensive than buying the new thing, which is sort of the big problem writ large, is that it's so cheap to just throw things away. And so we're trying to find ways to bring that cost down of reuse. We definitely do accept donations. Because of the limited space, we have to be really conservative about what we can take in, just because if it doesn't sort of match our normal workflow or things like that, it just takes up room in the shop. But a lot of times, like smaller things, like we get a lot of soft good donations, which are easy for us to store. Like big curtains, like the black fabric that you see hanging on stage, or the big main curtain that you see coming in and out, things like that. And we give a lot of second life or third lives or fourth lives to soft goods that maybe were made for one really specific trade show or event or theater show, and then we're able to pull them out. And we've used these same we have these silver shimmer curtains that we've reused many times now because they're just gorgeous. And every time I have to sew them a little bit differently to make them work for whatever the need is, but it's a much more economical and environmental use of those things. And that's where it gets to the next piece of it, which is about space, right? So even if we are doing the same show, year after year after year, we don't have the space, because again, space is money, to store 50 sets for the 50 most commonly done shows. And so every Mamma Mia that we've done, we've had to reconstruct from scratch. Now in some cases, we're reusing old platforms and flats and things like that, but it's still it's still a new design, it's still a new concept because we just don't have the room to store all of the stuff till the end of time, and so space becomes a really big issue, where even if the thing has been done before, we don't know what the design is going to hold for 6 months from now or for a year from now, so we don't know what to save and what to hold on to, and we can't hold on to everything, and so unfortunately we have to get rid of most of the stuff to make room for the next thing coming in. Curio Theater, which is a West Philly-based theater, Paul Kuhn is great at sort of like building everything in a way that can be broken down to its ultimate composited part. So he's going back to the level of lumber that you might find on the shelves at the store. We typically don't do that, and part of the reason is because we are not around for our shows. So we go and we drop off a show at a high school, we install it, and we walk away, and we have to know when we walk away that it is 100% safe. It's not gonna crack or fall apart on these students. And what that means is working with glue and binding materials so that the product can hold up over the weeks or months that they have the set. And so what we generally do is we build stock pieces that are really strong, that are glued together, that we can then attach in temporary ways with bolts and with screws and things like that. And so we'll break those down to those composite parts. But if we were gonna try to break it down further than that, the glue would hold on to the materials and we wouldn't be able to reuse it. The dream, it would be to be able to break everything down back to its raw wood form, because then it can be used to build anything of any shape and size. And then you get a lot more options in terms of your customization and your flexibility future on. You're not locked to those 4x8 shapes, but it then becomes more work, and there's a negative in terms of safety there that we're not able to accept for the kind of work that we do. We're using a lot of plywood, which is also harder to recycle because it's got all those layers of glue in it, but it's much stronger and more durable than sort of plain raw wood. We do work with metal sometimes, generally on these shorter runs. It doesn't make a lot of sense to use metal because it's so expensive to both buy and to weld, and then you're getting rid of it at the end. But the nice thing about metal is that it's much easier to recycle. So we can actually make money by taking metal to a recycling plant. And then the other thing that's big is foam, and we'll carve it into whatever shape, which is really nice because it's light, and so it's good for scenic pieces that have to move. Very rarely is a set coming back and everything is getting saved and go back into stock. But as opposed to a fully brand new set that is fully going into the dumpster, probably at least 50 to 70% of the sets that we do are coming back into stock. I have an environmental science degree, and so the work of Circular Philadelphia really struck a chord for me, and I think PSW is definitely, it's not our primary, mission in terms of what we're working on when I look at some of the other organizations who are in the network, but it's very core to kind of both our structure and our ideals and our purposes. And so I'm really interested in how we can all work together and collaborate, and how that all, can be a sharing environment. There's also, just as sort of a side note, there's a resource sharing working group amongst the theater community here in Philadelphia that I'm a member of, and then there's also representatives from other theater companies and producing organizations all over the city who are a member of, and we're all kind of working together to figure out how we can share resources as a group better and more efficiently. And so that means resources like materials, like raw materials, but it also means resources like knowledge. And so we put together a database of spaces in the city that are rentable for artists, and that's searchable, and that's on our website and things like that. We also have a database, really not a database, it's sort of a list of resources for theater artists that are on our website. Everything from ticketing softwares to scene shops to EDI practices, just everything is on there. And it's just a way to kind of help people there's a tremendous amount of resources that are out there that you might not know about or you might not know where to look. And so this is a place where you can start and have all those resources available. Karen and I from Resource Exchange spoke a few years ago as part of a conversation with this resource sharing committee. And one of the things that she said that really stuck with me over time is that they don't have a problem getting donations in. They have a problem getting people to come take them. And so for a while, they were actually taking movie sets and TV sets and having volunteers break them down and take the staples out them, and they could not get people to come and take that lumber because and now working for Scene Shop, I can see why. If I need sticks of 1x4, I need 50 of them, and I need them at 8 feet, and I need them to be darn straight. And so driving over to there to get 3 sticks, or maybe finding 3 sticks, is just not a cost-efficient use of my time. But I think we see this in all in this sort of the reuse economy question writ large is it's easy to get the materials in. It's hard to get people to come and take them. And I think the only way that we can get people to think of us as a place to get materials is if you have enough that it's worthwhile making the shopping trip. And in order to be able to have enough, you have to be able to store enough and have enough space. But we did a textile exchange, the Resource Sharing Committee, over the summer, and we were able to get a lot of donations in of costumes, clothing, fabrics, things like that, and very few people showed up to actually shop it and take things out of it. I've talked to, when I talk to costume designers about these sorts of initiatives, they're like, I love the idea, I'm so strapped for time, I just need to be able to go online, buy the exact same thing in 3 different sizes so that I can, so that I can bring it in, fit it on an actor, and then return the ones that I'm not using later. I cannot spend all of my time, even thrift shopping, I can't spend all my time thrift shopping to maybe find one ideal piece that may or may not fit, or that I have to then, edit the size of, which is gonna take more time. And so there's a really big gap in terms of like sort of the ease of buying stuff from anew. But if we were to have a 20, 30,000 square foot warehouse where we could store construction materials and scenic pieces and things like that, or props or costumes or any of that sort of stuff, it would be an incredibly valuable resource. There was a prop shop called Anything But Costumes outside of New York up in New Jersey that closed during the pandemic that was incredible, and everyone loved them because they had everything you could ever possibly need for any show. And we just don't have the space, and when we've looked into getting the space, it's just not worth, we can't make the money back to pay for the square footage, at least not anywhere close to Philadelphia Center. I mean, I think there are lots of pie in the sky ideas, but the one that sticks out to me as the most doable, because New York has something like this, is the Materials for the Arts. And Materials for the Arts, I don't know if you know it, but it's this wonderful New York organization that I believe is partially or mostly funded by the Department of Sanitation in New York, that is a warehouse that lots of companies donate things to, and it's office supplies, and it's fabric, and it's set pieces, and it's raw materials of every shape, sort, and kind. And any nonprofit arts organization can sign up for a slot to go shopping there and get materials for free. And then as part of that, they basically write a donation letter back to the donating company so they can get the tax benefits of the donation. And yeah, it needs a massive space, and you need a crew of people who can sort donations that are coming in and to manage the shoppers who are coming in, coming out. But it's something that works in New York, and we have a very robust art scene here. It could work here too if there was sort of the political will and the money behind it to make it happen. We're trying to keep stuff out of the landfill, right? Like, we're trying to be more eco-friendly and not contributing to sort of our global climate problem. That's obviously important to a lot of people in a philosophical way, but really a hard sell when you're looking at the bottom line budget. And so I think the easier one to make a priority is that if we can adjust our design or design within the confines of existing materials, it can save a lot of time and money. And of course, time for us is money because it's people's labor hours. And so for our small companies, that's sort of our biggest selling point, is like, we see your design, if we can adjust it this way, and this way, we can use some stock items, and then we can bring your total cost down as well. And so you can get more bang for your buck by doing it with more stock materials. And because we are supporting so many partners, especially in this time of the year, it also allows us to take more partners on. If we're not having to spend all this time building new things for one person, we can do 3 or 4 shows with using stock materials because it takes us less time to create that full set by using things that we've already made. But it really depends on the set. So there's a show running right now, Wishing to Grow Up Brightly, at Theater Horizon up in Norristown. And that show is a whole bunch of flats, and I would say about 80 to 90% of them are reused flats that we pulled from another show and are gonna get reused again after that. And then there's probably 10% that's brand new. We did a show at Philadelphia Theater Company a few months ago that was all these really custom cutout shapes. It had to be 100% new because everything was so incredibly custom, and that's just what the design called for. And so we try to balance out as much as we can, like whatever we can reuse and make reusable, we will, and then we'll try to hope that compensates for the stuff that we have to build anew. If it's just like sort of a boxy set, there's sort of a level of unprofessionalism, or just sort of like, because it's the cheap and easy way to do it, that's what you get in a lot of places that don't have as much money or don't have as much time. And so it's associated with being cheaper or easier. And so by having that extra level of detail and that extra level of quality, it really elevates the experience and makes it feel more special and can help to tell the story. And sometimes stock materials doesn't necessarily mean not being able to make it custom and things like that. It's more about, so a great example is that we're working on a set right now. The designer drew 14-foot walls, and all of our stock stuff comes in 4x8 because that's the standard sheet good size in America. And 14-foot walls means that we can use 8-foot walls to get to 8 feet. We can turn one on its side and then all of a sudden we get 12 feet, but we have to make something to get to that 14 feet. And so we actually suggested going to 16-foot walls so we can put two 8-foot things on top of each other. And all of a sudden we've gone from needing a whole custom thing to needing no custom things at all, which really helps with all of our goals in terms of reducing, financial material waste. I love stuff that's big and theatrical and detailed. In some cases, it's just more interesting and exciting, right? Like it's just to go see a story and to see something that you've never seen before on stage and to walk in and to have that that wow moment of like, oh, that's really cool. That's a different, interesting, engaging idea. It's really part of the magic of the storytelling and the magic of the specialness of the experience.
That was Nathan Renner Johnson from Philadelphia Scenic Works. You can see their work in theaters all across the Philadelphia region.
Thanks for joining us for episode 7 of the Circle Up podcast. For more information on Thunderbird, check them out on Instagram at Thunderbird Salvage. And for more information on Philadelphia Scenic Works, visit philadelphiascenicworks.org.
Join us for the next episode where we're going big. With all the development happening in Philly, do you ever wonder what happens to all the construction materials you see in those dumpsters? We'll be talking about just that in episode 8.
The Circle Up podcast is presented by Circular Philadelphia. It was produced by Meredith Nutting at Cool Goon Productions. This podcast was supported by a grant from Penn Treaty Special Services District. If you want to learn more about the circular economy, go to circularphiladelphia.org.